Welcome back to the night transmission. As you know, in our last episode, we did the first chapter of the static between us. Now, going from there to this new part, this chapter is going to shift the horror from haunted place to psychological temptation. What these next two parts are going to give is that the entity isn't trying to scare them anymore. It has learned what each of them want most, and it's beginning to use those memories against them. We are going to continue within the next two parts. And then to kind of give a little spoiler of what's ahead for the next part is basically going to continue with the mystery of what the station actually is and what basically brings it all together. And then that's how the story is going to start forming. And while the friends realize escaping may mean letting go of the people they're most desperate to see again, the emotional conflict is where the story really, really ramps up. So, if you're buckled in, grab a snack, and we shall continue the story from where we left off. Darkness. Not the kind that comes when you turn off a light. The kind that makes you wonder if opening your eyes would make any difference. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then, the emergency lights clicked on, one by one. Red. The entire station was bathed in a dull crimson glow. Dean was the first to break the silence. Okay. A shaky laugh escaped him. Nope. Absolutely not. I'm done. He turned around, expecting to see the front entrance. Instead, there was only another hallway. Long. Empty. Impossible. Jonah whispered, "That's not where we came from." Tessa nodded. "I know. The station's changing." Mara looked back toward the room they just left. The office was gone. In its place stood a hallway lined with framed photographs. Every single frame was crooked. Every single photo showed someone smiling. Employees, families, children, and radio hosts. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until Jonah stopped walking. "Guys?" Everyone turned. He was staring at one photograph near the end of the wall. It showed 4 teenagers standing in front of the radio station. They were smiling. One held an old portable radio. Dean frowned. "No." Mara stepped closer. It couldn't be, but it was. Them. The exact clothes they were wearing. The same backpacks. The same expressions. The only difference was the photograph looked old. Faded. Yellow with old age. As if it had been hanging there for decades. Tessa reached toward the frame. Written underneath was a small brass plaque. Summer Staff, 1978. Nobody breathed. Dean took a step back. "We weren't even born." Jonah swallowed. "I don't think..." He looked around. "I don't think this place cares." The radio crackled. Not loudly, just enough to remind them that it was still there. Jonah slowly picked it up. Static. Nothing else. Then, a familiar voice. "Jonah." He froze. Dean looked over. "What?" Jonah didn't answer. "Jonah." This time everyone heard it. It wasn't distorted. It wasn't ghostly. It sounded normal. A little older and calm, almost comforting. Jonah whispered, "That's my grandfather." Everyone stared at him. "My grandfather passed away 6 years ago," the voice continued. "You left something unfinished." Jonah shook his head. "No." "You promised." "I didn't." "You did." The radio clicked off by itself. Jonah nearly dropped it. "I don't like this." Nobody disagreed. The deeper they walked into the station, the stranger it became. Rooms appeared where they hadn't been rooms before. Doors led somewhere different every time they were opened. A staircase they'd already climbed somehow led underground instead of upstairs. Time didn't feel broken anymore. It felt folded, like someone had taken years, memories, and places and stacked them on top of one another. Tessa suddenly stopped. Listen. Everyone went quiet, very faintly. Someone was crying. Not close, not far away either. Just everywhere. Dean whispered, I hate that. The crying slowly changed into humming, then laughter. Children laughing, running, playing. Their footsteps echoed through the halls, yet every hallway remained empty. They eventually reached the main broadcast studio. Unlike the rest of the station, this room still had power. Rows of equipment glowed softly. Meters bounced. Headphones rested neatly on the desk. The microphone's red on-air light was illuminated. No one was sitting behind it, but someone was breathing, slow, steady, into the microphone. Mara instinctively backed away. Dean whispered, Tell me somebody else hears that. They all did. The breathing continued, then stopped. Silence. A click. The microphone came alive. If you're listening, a woman's voice, young, scared. Don't answer us. Static. We didn't know. Static swallowed the sentence. It remembers. The recording skipped. Started again. If you're listening, again. Don't answer us, again. Over and over. Like the station couldn't move forward. Like it was trapped inside 6 seconds of time. Jonah frowned. Wait, what? That's not a recording. Everyone looked at him. Listen carefully. They did. Every loop was slightly different. Different breathing, different pause, different fear. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't repeating herself. She was trying, again and again, to change what she said, as though time itself kept resetting before she could finish. Tessa quietly whispered, She's trapped. Nobody answered, because everyone was thinking the same thing. If she was trapped, what was trapping her? Without warning, every speaker inside the station erupted with static. The sound was deafening. Lights exploded overhead. Glass shattered somewhere down the hall. Dean covered his ears. Turn it off. Jonah desperately twisted the dial on the portable radio. Nothing. The static only grew louder. Then, all at once, it stopped. Every light went dark. Every machine shut off. Every sound disappeared. The silence lasted only a second. Then came a new voice. Not old, not young, not male, not female. It sounded like dozens of voices speaking perfectly together, calm, patient, almost curious. We know you. Now. The group stood frozen. The voice continued. You remember. You regret. You wish. We can give them back. Mara's eye widened. What does that mean? No answer. Instead, the room changed. The walls dissolved into darkness. The station disappeared. One by one, each of them found themselves standing somewhere else. Somewhere impossible. Somewhere personal. Dean stood alone in his childhood bedroom. Jonah found himself in his grandfather's workshop. Tessa was back in the hospital room where she'd last seen her grandmother alive. And Mara was standing in the kitchen of the home she grew up in. Her mother looked up from the stove, smiled, and said the words Mara had dreamed of hearing again for years. You're finally home. Back at the station, the microphone switched itself on. The red on-air light blinked once, then twice, then remained solid. Somewhere, something had started broadcasting again, and this time, it wasn't using the station's voices. It was using theirs. For Mara, it felt too real. Way too real. The smell of cinnamon drifted through the kitchen. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The old clock above the sink ticked exactly the way she remembered. Her mother turned around with a smile. "There you are." No hesitation. No confusion. Like Mara had never left. Like she'd never died. Mara couldn't speak. She simply stared. Her mother walked over and gently tucked the loose strand of hair behind Mara's ear. "You look tired." That sentence broke her. Because that's exactly what her mother used to say. Every single time, tears rolled down Mara's face. "I miss you," her mother smiled. "I know." Mara wrapped her arms around her. She expected nothing. Cold air. An illusion. Instead, she felt warmth, a heartbeat, the fabric of her sweater. It was real, or at least, it felt real. Elsewhere, Dean stood inside his childhood home. The television was on. His father sat in the living room reading the newspaper, something he hadn't done in years. "Dad?" No answer. He walked closer. "Dad?" The man slowly lowered the newspaper. His eyes met Dean's. "You finally came back." Dean froze. His father hadn't spoken to him like that since before the divorce. Before everything fell apart. He wanted to believe it. God, he wanted to believe it. Jonah stood inside his grandfather's workshop. The room smelled like sawdust and motor oil. Old jazz music played from a dusty radio on the shelf. His grandfather was repairing a fishing reel. Without looking up, he smiled. "Took you long enough." Jonah laughed through the tears. "You sound exactly the same." His grandfather chuckled. "Of course I do." Tessa stood beside her grandmother's hospital bed. Only she wasn't sick anymore. She looked healthy, laughing, reading one of her old mystery novels. She looked up. "Oh, sweetheart, you've gotten so big." Tessa covered her mouth. She couldn't move. She couldn't think. Every part of her wanted to stay. Back inside Harrow Station, the microphone remained live. No one stood before it, yet voices continued broadcasting. Different voices, different memories. The station wasn't replaying the past anymore. It was creating it. Outside, the red warning light atop the radio tower flashed. Once, twice, 3 times, then stopped. For the first time in decades, the station was transmitting at full power. Miles away, boats floating offshore reported hearing static through their radios. Truck drivers passing along the coastal highway lost every station at once. Emergency dispatchers received empty calls filled with strange whispers. Nobody knew why. The island had started broadcasting again. Inside the station, a tape recorder clicked to life. It reeled slowly, began turning. A voice filled the room. Older, worn, calm. "If you're reading this, or hearing this wherever you are, then we failed." Static. "My name is Arthur Bell. I was a chief engineer at the Harrow Transmission Radio. If this recording is still playing, it means the station is awake." The tape hissed loudly. "We thought it was interference, military frequencies, solar activity, atmospheric distortion. We were wrong." A pause. "What we found was listening." Photographs suddenly covered the walls. New ones, hundreds of them. Visitors, tourists, fishermen, children, families. Every decade. 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 1980s, 2001, 2002. People standing outside Harrow Station, smiling. None of them appeared anywhere else, only here. Dean slowly walked closer. "They all came here." Jonah looked around. "And they never left." Arthur's voice continued. "It doesn't haunt the island. It haunts memory. It studies grief. It listens to regret. And once it knows what you're missing, it becomes impossible to leave." Mara suddenly gasped. The kitchen disappeared. Her mother froze, mid-smile, like a paused movie. The room cackled. Mara suddenly gasped. The kitchen disappeared. Her mother froze, mid-smile, like a paused movie. The room cracked. Not physically, reality itself. Small fractures spread through the walls, light leaked through them, static seeped from the inside the cracks. Her mother's voice distorted. Mara? Don't. The smile stretched unnaturally. We need you. Stay. Her face flickered. One moment, her mother. The next. Someone Mara had never seen before. Then another face. Then another. Hundreds. Thousands. As if something underneath was struggling to keep the illusion together. Mara stumbled backward. No. The room continued breaking apart. Furniture dissolved into static. The walls melted away. The kitchen vanished. She found herself back inside the station. The others appeared moments later. Each looked devastated. Dean wiped tears from his face. Jonah refused to speak. Tessa looked physically sick. Nobody asked what they had seen. They already knew. The station hadn't shown them ghosts. It had shown them hope, and then ripped it away. The radio clicked again. Only this time, the voice wasn't calm. It sounded hungry. You almost stayed. We can try again. Dean shouted, We're leaving. The station answered, Where? Every hallway changed. Every exit disappeared. Doors opened into rooms they'd had already left. Windows showed different parts of the island. The floor vibrated beneath them. The building itself had become a maze. Arthur's recording returned one final time. If you're still alive, there's only one way to stop the broadcast. You don't listen, or you don't silence the station. You make it forget you're listening. The tape snapped. Silence. Nobody moved. Finally, Jonah looked down at the old portable radio. I think, he swallowed, I think this radio isn't receiving the broadcast. Everyone stared at him. I think it's transmitting us. At that exact moment, every radio inside the station switched on together, and through dozens of overlapping speakers, the group heard something impossible. Their own conversation. From tomorrow, word for word, including a sentence none of them have even said yet. Dean slowly turned toward Mara. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, Mara heard herself speak, not from beside her, from one of the radios. Softly, almost a whisper. It means, one of us never leaves the island. Every speaker felt silent. No one said another word, because standing there, listening to a future that hadn't happened, they all realized something terrifying. The station wasn't showing them possibilities anymore. It already knew how their story ended. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The station had already shown them tomorrow. Or at least one version of it. Dean finally broke the silence. So what now? No one answered. The only sound left inside Harrow Station was the low hum of electricity, not loud enough to notice, just loud enough that once you heard it, you couldn't ignore it. Jonah looked down at the old portable radio. It felt heavier now, almost warm, like it had been sitting in the sun all day. He turned it over in his hands. There, scratched into the metal beneath years of rust, were 3 words. Property of WHTR. He frowned. I don't think this radio was ever meant to lead this place. Mara looked at him. What do you mean? I think this isn't just picking up the station. He looked around the room. It's literally a part of it. The room felt silent. Then Tessa slowly looked toward the broadcast console. The transmitter. Arthur's bells. Words echoed in her mind. You don't silence the station. You make it forget you're listening. Her eyes widened. I think I know what he meant. Dean looked over. Please tell me it's something that gets us off this island. She nodded toward the massive transmission equipment behind the glass. I don't think we have to destroy the station. I think we have to stop it from hearing us. The room suddenly became freezing. Every radio switched on. Not one, not 2. All of them. Static poured from dozens of speakers at once. Then came the voices. Not whispers anymore. Begging, crying, calling each of them by name. Mara, Dean, Jonah, Tessa. Every voice sounded familiar. Every voice belonged to someone they had loved, someone they had lost, someone they still wished they could see one more time. Dean closed his eyes. For just a second, he almost answered. He almost said, "Dad?" But before he could speak, Mara grabbed his arm. "Don't." He looked at her. Tears filled his eyes. I know. So do I. For the first time that night, none of them chased the voices. None of them asked questions. None of them stepped closer. They simply listened and let the silence answer for them. The station didn't like that. The lights exploded overhead. Windows shattered. The floor shook violently beneath them. The building groaned like it was alive. The voice returned, only this time it sounded angry. "You chose to forget." The walls began changing again. Hallways stretched impossibly long. Doors disappeared. The tower outside screamed as metal twisted against the wind. Jonah looked at the transmitter. "If we're doing this, we do it now." The four of them rushed toward the control room. Old switches sparked wildly. Meters slammed back and forth. Static blasted from every speaker. Tessa grabbed the station logbook from the desk. Inside, every page contained names. Hundreds of them. Some crossed out. Some circled. Some with notes beside them. Stayed. Answered. Never left. The final page was blank. Until now. Ink slowly appeared across the paper. Mara, Dean, Jonah, Tessa, their names, writing themselves. Dean slammed the book shut. "No!" Jonah climbed onto the broadcast platform. The portable radio still hissed in his hands. He looked at the transmitter, then at his friends. I think it needs a signal." Marg looked confused. "What are you saying?" "If I disconnect this," he held up the radio, "the station loses us." Dean immediately shook his head. "No." Jonah smiled weakly. "It'll be okay." "You don't know that." "I don't. But Arthur Bell did." Silence. Then Jonah laughed. A real laugh. "I can't believe I'm trusting a guy who'd been dead for 50 years. Mara stepped toward him. "We'll figure something else out. There isn't time." The tower outside let another deafening groan. Cracks raced across the walls. The station was collapsing. Their voices became frantic. Not only were the cracks happening in the station, the sky was falling apart. "No, stay. Don't leave us again." Jonah looked at his friends one last time. "You know what the worst part about grief is?" Nobody answered. "You spend years wishing for one more conversation." He smiled sadly. "But maybe moving on means accepting that one conversation is never enough." He ripped the radio open. Wires snapped. Static screamed through the room. The transmitter erupted with light. Every clock inside the station began spinning backward. Fast. Too fast to count. The building folded around them. Walls disappeared. The ceiling became the night sky. The ocean rushed upward. Everything dissolved into the white noise. Then, nothing. Mara woke up on the ferry dock. Morning sunlight warmed her face. Seagulls cried overhead. Dean sat nearby, still catching his breath. Tessa slowly opened her eyes. All three looked around. The island sat quietly across the water, abandoned, silent, as if nothing had ever happened. Dean looked around. "Where's Jonah?" Nobody answered. They searched the dock, the shoreline, the ferry. Nothing. Just the old portable radio, lying on the wood, broken, its antenna bent toward the sea. Weeks passed. Police searched Harrow Island. They found nothing. No station, no tower, no evidence anyone had been there for decades. The official report blamed the rough terrain, confusion, exposure. Jonah was listed as missing. His family never stopped looking. Life moved on, or at least, it tried to. Dean stopped talking about the island. Tessa deleted every recording from her phone, except one. A 6-second audio clip she couldn't erase. Whenever she played it, she heard nothing but static. But every once in a while, usually late at night, she could swear there was a voice buried underneath. Not asking for help, not screaming, just laughing, softly, almost peacefully. 3 months later, Mara woke up just after 2:17 in the morning. She wasn't sure why. The house was quiet. Then she heard it. Static. Very faint, coming from the kitchen. She followed the sound. An oak clock radio sat on the counter, one that hadn't worked in years. Its display was blank. Its cord wasn't plugged in. The speaker crackled. A familiar voice whispered, "Mara." She froze. It wasn't her mother. It wasn't the station. It was Jonah. Just one sentence. "So, did we make it?" The radio went silent. Outside, far beyond the coastline, where the fog swallowed the horizon, a single red light blinked once, paused, twice, paused, once. Somewhere, something was still broadcasting. Though the group of friends remained friends, of course, life does move on for them. It's only been a few months after the events of what happened on Harrow Island. Everyone is still in contact with each other. They do meet up once in a while. No longer on that island anymore. They meet at least at Mara's house, in her backyard. You know, they always talk, they always wish things were different. Sometimes they have moments where they do believe that maybe it's possible Jonah is still out there. And nobody really knows. In the faint distance, Mara's radio from her kitchen turns on while they're all hanging out outside. And the only person that does hear something is Dean. Dean walks into the room and immediately hurries everybody in. A transmission is coming in. But the question is, from where?
I'm at a break. I find myself 30 points. Over. What happened? What happened? Where did everybody go? The transmitter's keeping the portal closed. It's not working, man. We're not getting through.
If you've made it this far, I want to say thank you guys so much for sticking around and enjoying this story, which I really hope you did. I was heavily inspired by a game called Oxenfree, so thank you if you really enjoyed this. It means a lot. I hope I can contribute and make more things like this outside of like true crime and paranormal stories. So yeah, and always remember to turn that goddamn radio on and tune in every Tuesday.
You children will never learn.